Hey everyone, I thought it'd be great for me to share my three flex predictions over the next 5 years. And it's less about the direction of flex from a hospitality and experience perspective. We've seen a lot of that already. It's more about, well, what does flex mean for an investor or a landlord? And how is that going to evolve, especially for all of these new developments and redevelopments happening around Australia and Asia, especially? And it's important because I feel like there's a bit of saturation happening within the market, as everyone's probably observing themselves. There's been, my team specifically, there's been a bunch of opportunities we've had to not consider because it's too close to another operation of ours, or we feel like it's being plonked right in the middle of, another four or five operators, especially when you're dealing with CBD districts, right? So the question then becomes, hey, if flex and co-working, or co-working specifically, is becoming a bit saturated in your market, how are you going to respond to flex requirements from tenants, right? And that's what I want to explore today. And I think there's three things that I think are going to develop in response to this impending saturation. In some areas it's already happened, right? Because when you think about it, the main reason there was this bit of a landlord-owned or partnered co-working boom over the last couple of years is because when a tenant goes to a landlord and says, we want flex, the landlord looks at them and goes, okay, cool. And back then, or even today, flex to them means, oh, I need to go and speak to a co-working or a flex operator and chuck in enough space to make the operator happy so they hit their economies of scale. And as long as they facilitate some sort of flexible arrangement for my tenants within the building, happy days. And I don't think that can happen too much anymore because many operators, and rightfully so, they jumped on that opportunity to do a bit of a land grab, partner with some really great landlords and get into great buildings under management style partnership agreements. But what now? What happens when you're redeveloping or you've got a new development in a great part of town and tenants demand some form of flexibility, and you go, okay, let's put a co-working operator or a flex operator in there, but no one really puts their hand up to take that opportunity with you because they've got one down the road, and the only ones that may put their hand up are behaving foolishly because they haven't really done their market due diligence and realized, well, there's not a lot of market share left in that area because every brand kind of has a presence now. So what do you do about that? And so the first point I'm going to address in terms of where I think flex is going, I call it flex light. And it's something my team specifically is focused a lot on from a research and development perspective over the last year. And it's something that I think is a great opportunity from next year forward. And in essence, flex light is this. It is, rather than shoot for your 1,500, 2,000 square meters plus, in terms of NLA within the co-working or the flex tenancy. And as many of you know, that's kind of where you need to be to get economies of scale for that business to be making enough money to pay a rent target, for the operator to take out enough margin for them to be happy, etc., etc. What about like a 400, 600 square meter flex amenity, but not an amenity in the way that, oh, it's a write-off, it's going to cost you money, let's try and shove it into outgoings, but is there a product offering that can be developed where it can be small enough and it can wash its face, maybe make a bit of rent, but it ticks the boxes of what the tenants are actually asking for? Because when a tenant asks for flex, they're not asking for 2,000 square meters of co-working, right? Most of the time they're asking access to bookable meeting rooms, some sort of amenity, cafe, lounge, maybe a bookable event space is really popular right now. So get those in there. And as a flex light offering or product offering, make sure that operator has enough of those, commercial product mixes like some private offices and whatnot, so that they can generate enough income to run a profitable business, right? And many operators can't do it because you don't get that economies of scale, and fine, because they're more focused on the larger operations. But I think it's a huge opportunity for operators like us. We're part of the JLL network, I suppose. We're a business unit within JLL, where if JLL's already managing the property, we're managing the asset under our property asset management team, and it's a large enough asset to have headcount on site, well, then there's an opportunity to have economies of scale and synergies behind the costs and the headcount and the systems for us also to deliver a very small flex offering that ticks the tenant's needs. And then suddenly you're not worried about, oh, we're going to have to open something that may not work because there's just too much competition in the area. You've got a small flex operation that ticks the tenant needs, makes enough money because the costs are squashed, because there's economies of scale with also managing the asset to run this smaller amenity orientated flex offering truly intended to help the building, right? It's not like a third party or independent operator coming in just trying to re-rent the space. So I think Flex Light, there's a huge opportunity there because frankly, it's going to be a forced evolution. You know, you're going to get to a point where you just can't keep chucking operators in buildings to elevate them or respond to tenants. So the solution should be Flex Light, right? And then you can tailor it exactly to what the tenants are asking for and go on this like kind of balancing scale journey on, well, how do we make enough money with it? What do you recommend? And put that in there, right? So if you'd like to discuss that, please reach out. We've been looking at that for quite some time now. Now, the second one you've probably heard me speak a lot about, but I call it spec suites with a service. And again, I love the sibilants that play there, the 3 S's. If you've got an operator in your building, you really got to start taking advantage of what can they do for your other tenancies or the spec suites that you're having within your asset, right? Because again, the JLL statistic was by 2030, I believe, I could be getting this wrong at this point, but 30% of commercial real estate will be flexible. But that 30% is split into 25% spec suites, 5% co-working, right? So there's going to be a surplus of spec suite offerings. So aside from a good fit out and an attractive deal, how are you going to differentiate it? So if you have a co-working operator in your building who can also service those spec suites, so think of a roaming community manager that pops up and down and takes care of their space needs, potentially providing network or internet, you know, all that kind of stuff. You can get into the more boring stuff like cleaning and health and safety and all that stuff if you really want to. That's great, right? But not everyone could consider it because they don't have that operator and that asset, right? That's quite a niche group of landlords. However, if now you've got this Flex Light offering, I think that opens it up even more, right? Because you can have the Flex Light, the small offering that also delivers spec suites with a service within your building. And we're seeing a lot of opportunities that we're working on now where the Flex Light tenancy may only be the 600 to 1,000 square meters within a floor that's quite large, like a 2,000 square meter floor plate. And then you cut the rest of the remainder of the 1,000 square meters on that 2,000 square meter floor plate into spec suites. And then you've got a very seamless kind of spec suites with a service dynamic happening there because it's all on the same floor. Not to say you can't do it on other floors, but that's some stuff that we're looking at delivering right now. So spec suites with a service, I think, is a huge opportunity there. And when you think about any operators trying to get into that space, there's an opportunity to earn fees or a fee share within that service, that separate service agreement. So suddenly the Flex Light offering that may not have been commercially viable for you because you don't have that opportunity to also manage the asset like our team does. Well, what does it look like if you're also delivering that spec suites with a service style arrangement with that landlord? Do you get a cut of the, the extra margin that's added on as $1 per square meter rate, added on as $1 per square meter rate on those spec suites? I don't know. You can figure that out. And the third one, again, born in a growing, saturated co-working and general market, is niche operations. I think there's a great opportunity if you've got the stones for it, and if you want to put the market intelligence behind it and really figure this out with any landlords that you want to partner with if you're an operator, is to set up a niche or a targeted operation. Rather than fill it with anyone with a pulse, is there a particular industry that you really want to nurture that also works for that owner and their asset? They may be particularly targeting certain tenants for that building. Is there an opportunity for a smaller co-working operation that also targets that? Because then you're really creating a really niche brand and customer base, right? You're not going to be competing with the 6 others within the potential area that are just providing flexible terms. You're going to be targeting a particular industry that'll attract those types of companies, whether it's through your product mixes that you're putting within the floor plan that are tailored to their needs, whether it's the activation, the community itself. I think that is just waiting to be done correctly. And we've been dabbling in that market just through our own journey, because we've got great success stories like Melbourne Connect Coworking with Melbourne University in Melbourne. That is a very tailored and specific target. It's 2,000 square meters. It's targeting Melbourne University delegates, partners, biotech and medtech, and it's 100% occupied. Right? It's not too small of an operation. It's 2,000 square meters. It's still chunky. So more stuff like that. And I think if you can almost work with the brand to deliver it, that's even better, because then you're not creating something from scratch, but you have the weight of a brand helping you do that. And in our case for the Melbourne Connect Co-working, it was Melbourne University, right? Imagine if, as an operator, half of that occupancy, if not more, is already anchored and taken up, not just by that particular brand, but also their customers. So you're only really looking to fill the remainder of it with your external marketing whilst targeting those industries. It suddenly becomes a lot less risky of a business case than let's just build something, hope the fit out is beautiful, and try and fill it, even though we've got 4 other centers around us technically providing the same thing, all screaming hospitality, and we're just going to get into an undercutting war. Who's going to do the shittiest deal to get them in the tenancy because they're desperate for revenue? So that's kind of how you also future-proof your co-working and your flex operation. So those were my 3. That's where I think the market's going to go, right? There's always going to be a place for traditional co-working operations and the evolution of these more hospitality-centric co-working sites. But you got to ask yourself, how many of those can be delivered till there's just too much, right? Because they still have rent obligations. They still need to make a certain amount of money. And if it just becomes a war of who's going to provide the most flexible but best experience, I think there's going to be a cap in that market. And if flexibility is one of the levers as a landlord you want to pull to differentiate your asset, well, you don't want to be relying purely on that. Hence the flex light, hence the spec suites with the service, hence the niche offerings that you want to look into. So hopefully that was helpful. And I might share a few others before the year ends, but I think those are 3 different takes you may not hear about. It's just what I'm seeing. It's also what I'm doing. We're focusing on that. And I'm happy to share it because, if anyone wants to dabble in the area and race us, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of good competition. I think that's where the industry needs to go to grow. So bring it on.